The sky above rural Oregon was dark, the kind of night that pressed down on the earth with weight. Thick evergreens lined the narrow stretch of Mourners Road, an isolated logging route that twisted deep through the dense Ashbury forest. Locals called it cursed. Drivers avoided it. But tonight, 52-year-old Mr. Greg Barlow, a seasoned logging truck driver, had no choice. The timber had to reach the Ashbury mill by sunrise. Delays meant layoffs, and Greg couldn't afford another strike on his record. The truck groaned under the weight of old pine logs, fresh from a private tract of woodland. As Greg adjusted his cap and pulled onto the winding road, he noticed something odd. A woman in a long, dirt-stained dress stood at the edge of the forest, just beyond the reach of his headlights. She didn't wave. She didn't move. She just what? Greg blinked. Gone. He shook it off. Eyes playing tricks again, he muttered, gripping the steering wheel tighter. But the air in the cab turned noticeably colder. A musty scent filled his nose, like damp bark and raw fish. He rolled down the window slightly, trying to clear the air. Suddenly, the sound echoed from behind the truck. Not from the tires. Not from outside. From inside the load. Greg slowed to a crawl, heart pounding. He pulled to the shoulder, grabbed his flashlight and stepped out. Wind rustled the treetops. His boots squelched in the mud as he circled around the truck bed. The logs were stacked neatly. No sign of shifting. No animals. No broken straps. Probably just movement from the terrain, he muttered, voice shaky. He climbed back in and continued. But the knocking returned, louder, faster. Like fists pounding from inside the stacked timber. Greg glanced in the side mirror. His throat tightened. A dark figure sat atop the logs. Still unmoving. He slammed the brakes. Thud. The cab jolted. When he whipped his head around, nothing. The figure was gone. The radio, playing an old country station, flickered into static. A low voice crackled through the speaker, so faint it was barely audible. Thwood. Greg switched it off. Nope. We're not doing this, he said, forcing a laugh. But the truck died. The engine coughed once and fell completely silent. His breath fogged the windshield. He tried the ignition. Nothing. From the mirror, he caught a glimpse, a tall, dark silhouette with glowing red eyes standing near the rear wheels. Its face was a blur. No features. Just shadow and those burning eyes. Then came the voice again, no longer faint. This is our land. Return what isn't yours. Greg lunged out of the truck, stumbling into the mud. He shouted into the trees, I didn't know. I'm just the driver. The figure advanced slowly, clawed hands stretching toward the cab. Greg backed away until his legs gave out. His heart hammered against his ribs. Just then, headlights appeared in the distance. A second truck. It was Sam and Jorge, fellow loggers from the same route. They pulled up beside him, confused at the sight of Greg sprawled on the ground, pointing toward his truck bed. Something's up there, he whispered. Sam climbed the trailer. There's nothing here, he said. But Jorge noticed something odd. One of the logs didn't match. It was damp, darker, unmarked. Where did this log come from? Greg stammered. From the West Grove. Sam turned pale. You went into that patch? Greg nodded, unsure. Jorge's face hardened. That land's not supposed to be logged. There's old stories. Cursed ground. Ghost sightings. Missing hunters. Greg felt a chill crawl up his spine. We need to dump it. Now. But if I go back without a full load, they'll fire me, Greg argued. This is my third strike. Sam's tone was firm. Then it's your job or your life. That thing doesn't want the wood taken. They began unstrapping the load when Greg stopped. His phone buzzed, a message from his boss. Don't come back without a full haul. No exceptions. He looked at Sam and Jorge. I'm taking it, Greg said finally. I'll stop at the next diner, gas up, take a break, then finish the run. The others exchanged a look but didn't argue. As Greg drove off again, the fog grew denser. Every mile felt longer than the last. He finally spotted an all-night roadside diner. Tilly's Stop, the only rest area for miles. Inside, the air was warm and smelled of old coffee and fried bacon. A wrinkled old man sat at the bar, sipping tea. Greg ordered a coffee and took a seat. "You came through Mourners Road?" the old man asked, not looking up. Greg nodded cautiously. "Yeah." "You shouldn't have," he replied. "That forest, it doesn't like strangers. And it sure as hell doesn't like thieves." "I'm not a thief." The old man's eyes met his. "Doesn't matter what you think you are. That wood doesn't belong to you. And it's following you now." Greg's mouth went dry. "Following me?" The man leaned in close. "It won't stop until it's back where it belongs, or something's taken in its place." Outside, Greg's truck idled, the windshield slowly fogging up. A handprint appeared on the glass. Fresh, wet, and not his own. Greg Barlow stared at the handprint on his truck's windshield. It was muddy, fresh, and far too large for any normal person. The fingers stretched nearly to the roof, and the palm left a dripping smear across the glass. Greg felt his stomach churn. He turned to the old man in the diner. "You saw that, right?" But the man was gone. Greg blinked. The bar stool sat empty. No teacup. No trace. Just a faint chill in the air, as if something had just slipped out the door behind him. The waitress returned with his coffee. "Everything all right, Hahn? You look like you saw a ghost." Greg didn't answer. He rushed back outside. The air had turned bitterly cold. The forest around Tilly's Stop looked darker than before, shadows thicker. His truck sat in eerie silence, engine still idling. He opened the door slowly and climbed in, staring at the muddy handprint up close. It was smeared now, sliding downward. But no one was around. He turned the engine off and tried to calm his breathing. "Maybe I just need some sleep." But then, from the back again, Greg's breath caught. The knocking grew faster, louder, like fists on a coffin lid. Not again. He started the engine. It groaned but turned over. Just as he shifted into gear, the radio, still turned off, crackled to life. "You were warned." The voice was inhuman and full of rage. Greg smashed the power button, but the voice didn't stop. "You took from us. Now we take from you." Suddenly, a high-pitched shriek came from the back of the truck, like metal tearing apart. Greg hit the gas, wheels spinning in the mud before gaining traction. He pulled back onto the road, speeding through the thick forest night. But the air was heavy, oppressive, as if something ancient was watching, waiting, breathing just behind the trees. His hands trembled as he gripped the wheel. "Just keep driving. Don't stop." The road narrowed again, high pines closing in from both sides. The truck's headlights flickered. Then, the rearview mirror reflected something impossible. The logs in the back were moving, twisting, shifting, as if something underneath was trying to crawl out. Greg glanced at the dashboard, check engine light flashing. Then the radio turned on again. "You can't run from us." A laugh followed, shrill and distorted, then silence. He tried to focus on the road, but a sudden bang hit the top of the cab. Then another. Then the dragging sound of claws scraping metal. Greg swerved. "Oh God, what is this?" As the truck hurtled down the highway, something large landed on the hood. A dark mass. Humanoid but with no face. Only a black void where features should be, and two bright, glowing red eyes. The thing pounded the windshield with inhuman strength. Greg swerved again, nearly crashing into a tree. He braked hard, and the figure flew off into the ditch, but disappeared the moment it hit the ground. Gasping for breath, Greg reached for his phone. No service. The clock on the dashboard blinked 3:33 a.m. "I have to dump the load," he muttered. "I have to end this." But when he got out and moved to the back of the truck, the logs were silent, still, as if mocking him. Then, as he climbed up, he saw it, blood. a slow trickle running between two logs. Greg stumbled back, nearly falling. No. The forest echoed with whispers, hundreds of voices, overlapping, unintelligible. Crying, screaming, pleading. He jumped into the cab and floored the accelerator. He didn't care about potholes or road signs anymore. All he could think about was getting out. But the road twisted and twisted, turning him around. The trees all looked the same. He drove for what felt like hours, but somehow ended up back at a clearing with a broken wooden sign. West Grove Logging Access, Private. He'd made a full loop. The whispers returned, louder now. From the trees. From the truck bed. From inside the cab. He saw movement in the passenger seat, his jacket lifting slowly, as if something invisible was crawling underneath it. He flung open the door and jumped out, heart thudding. Headlights appeared again, this time from a small, battered pickup. It pulled over beside him, and a young man stepped out, a gallon of diesel in one hand. "Need help?" he asked. Greg looked at him like a lifeline. "Yes, please. I ran out earlier, but things have been happening. Things I can't explain." The man, named Tommy, nodded slowly. "We've all seen things out here. You've been through Mourners Road, haven't you?" Greg nodded. "You're not the first," Tommy said. "Come on, let's get you fuel." As they poured the diesel into the truck, Greg couldn't stop checking the tree-line. He half expected the faceless shadow to emerge again. Tommy put a hand on his shoulder. "There's an old mosque, converted from a church, in the next town. Folks there say prayers can calm whatever's in that forest." Greg's eyes widened. "A mosque?" Tommy nodded. "The imam there, Imam Rahman, he's helped a few other drivers. You might want to talk to him." They drove together, Greg trailing behind in his truck. The road grew quieter. The sky began to lighten with the earliest hints of dawn. As they neared the town of Alcalo, the haunting feeling began to fade, but not entirely. The last thing Greg saw before pulling into the mosque's parking lot was a red handprint on the inside of his windshield. Still wet. The small town of Alcalo sat quietly beneath the morning fog, nestled between Oregon's hills like a forgotten secret. Greg Barlow followed Tommy's pickup to a modest building at the town's edge, once a wooden chapel, now a converted mosque with a green crescent moon atop its steeple. A sign out front read, "Masjid al-Huda, open to all seeking peace." Greg parked his truck near the back, hands trembling as he stared at the rearview mirror. The logs sat still, but he knew something was wrong. That handprint inside his windshield hadn't dried. It shimmered faintly in the early light, as though it had just been pressed there. Tommy led him inside. The air inside the masjid was warm and serene. The scent of sandalwood lingered in the air. A small group of men stood near the prayer area, dressed modestly, with tired yet kind eyes. At the front stood a tall man in a gray robe with a thick beard and calm expression, Imam Rahman. Tommy whispered briefly into the imam's ear, pointing at Greg. The imam nodded and gestured for Greg to come forward. "Peace be upon you," Imam Rahman said gently. "You've brought something back with you, haven't you?" Greg hesitated. "I didn't mean to. I was just driving, taking wood from a patch west of Mourners Road." The imam's face darkened slightly. "The land beyond Mourners is not meant to be disturbed. There are spirits that guard it. Old ones." Greg lowered his voice. "They've been following me. Knocking. Whispering. One attacked my truck. I saw blood in the logs. I don't know what's real anymore." Imam Rahman placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You are not crazy, Greg. But you are being warned. These things, they feed off fear, off disrespect. You must return what is not yours. But before that, we must cleanse you and the truck." He gestured for the others to gather. Greg followed them outside, where the truck loomed ominously in the growing light. The imam walked a slow circle around it, whispering verses from the Quran. As he passed the rear of the truck, the imam suddenly stopped. Blood. Fresh blood seeped between the logs again. Thicker this time, dripping down onto the tires. The air turned cold, and the sky above dimmed as if a storm were rolling in. "We need to pray," the imam said firmly. "Now." The group formed a circle around the truck. Greg, uncertain but desperate, joined them. As they prayed, reciting Surah Al-Baqarah and Ayat Al-Kursi, the ground trembled faintly beneath their feet. The trees around the parking lot rustled without wind. And then, a scream. It came not from the woods, but from within the truck bed, a hollow, pained, angry shriek that shook Greg to his core. "Keep praying," Imam Rahman called out. As the verses continued, shadows appeared on the side of the truck, clawed hands, faces without eyes, pressing from the inside of the timber pile. One log cracked violently, sending a loud snap through the air, but none of the men flinched. The blood stopped dripping. The whispers faded. One by one, the shadows peeled back, like smoke evaporating in the sun. Greg fell to his knees. He couldn't speak. Imam Rahman approached him, placing a hand on his head. "It is not over yet. You must return the wood." I can't go back there alone." "You won't. I will go with you." Later that morning, after the dawn prayer, Greg and Imam Rahman loaded into the truck and returned to Mourners Road. The journey back felt heavy, silent, but not evil, not like before. When they arrived at the West Grove, Greg parked near the edge of the forest clearing. Birds chirped again. The sky was bright, but the air still held an eerie stillness. The Imam spoke. "Unload it here. Every piece." Greg nodded and climbed into the back. As each log hit the ground, the scent of decay lifted from the air. By the time the last one dropped, the trees felt still again, at peace. Imam Rahman bent down and placed his palm on the earth. He recited a quiet dua in Arabic, ending with, "O Allah, may this place no longer be violated by arrogance or greed." Greg sat on the tailgate, wiping sweat from his brow. What happens now?" The Imam looked at him. "Now you begin again. Wiser." That evening, back in Elk Hollow, Greg sat at a local diner, not Tilly's, but a different one. He stared at his coffee, hands still shaking slightly. He knew he would never take a shortcut through a forest again. The boss at the mill fired him the next day. But for the first time in years, Greg didn't care. He returned to Elk Hollow, took a job delivering supplies, and helped the mosque when he could. Every Friday, he sat quietly in the back during prayers, never speaking much, but always watching, listening. Sometimes, late at night, he still heard a faint knock in his dreams. But when he woke up, the air was light, peaceful. He knew now, not everything taken from nature comes without a price.